Those who watch baseball in the 90s remember the Yankees for this, and this. And perhaps many may say it's all because of this person, but instead, I totally disagree and think this person deserves much of the credit for building a dynasty. The term from one end of the spectrum to the other could be used to describe New York Yankees baseball in the 90s. And this video is going to take a look at how quickly Yankees baseball went from horrible to this, and why the Yankees dynasty perhaps prompted baseball fans to dislike baseball. For the 1990 MLB season, the Yankees were going to have the worst season winning percentage-wise since 1913. The most well-known Yankees player at the time was Don Mattingly, who was in the part of his career where he wasn't the same elite hitter he was in the mid-80s due to back issues. Jesse Barfield was perhaps the best player this season, but his performance, or no one else's performance, was enough to make Yankees fans happy. However, there was something major that transpired that prompted Yankees fans to cheer and give a standing ovation. During a game at Yankee Stadium on July 30, 1990, it was announced that Yankees owner George Steinbrenner was given a lifetime ban from doing his day-to-day operations with the Yankees, but could remain as a limited partner with the club. Fans at Yankee Stadium rejoiced because they were seemingly quite unhappy with the way Steinbrenner was running the Yankees organization. In short, Steinbrenner was suspended for paying a gambler $40,000 to basically dig up dirt on Dave Winfield to make Winfield look bad. As Steinbrenner, he kinda had a vendetta against Winfield. Without the extremely impatient and impulsive Steinbrenner micromanaging the Yankees could actually be ran like a normal franchise, and the person to be making the personal decisions would be Gene "Stick" Michael, as he did a tremendous job. So the average age on the Yankees ball club was around 28-29 years old. But New York, they had a couple of young players I remember being really highly talked about. The first is Kevin Moss, who showed a good eye at the plate and hit 21 home runs as a rookie in 1990 in only 79 games. The second player, Brian Taylor, who was a left-handed high school pitcher drafted first overall by the Yankees, as Taylor was being touted as one of the best pitching prospects ever. However, Moss's career quickly declined, and Brian Taylor, he never made it to the big leagues. But despite these two young players not working out as the Yankees would have hoped, the farm system would wind up being quite fruitful. On February 17, 1990, the Yankees signed a little-known pitcher from Panama in Mariano Rivera. Then for the 1990 MLB draft, the Yankees, they drafted Andy Pettitte and Jorge Posada in rounds 22 and 24. Then for the 91 MLB season, center fielder Bernie Williams would begin his major league career. And I remember so much was being said about how talented Williams was and how great he was going to be, but early on, his numbers didn't back that up. However, that would change. The Yankees, they went 71 and 91 in 1991. Then for the MLB draft, with the 6th overall selection, the Yankees, they selected Derek Jeter, and it would be these 5 players who came up and were developed through the Yankee system that would become so important in the coming years for New York. For the 1992 season, the Yankees, they signed up power-hitting Danny Tartabull, and Buck Showalter, he'd be the new manager. Now, I just want to say this about Buck Showalter. I think so highly of Showalter, and it's hard to truly evaluate managers as it's impossible to see every game a manager manages, but the way Buck analyzes and teaches baseball in regards to items like runners running into outs on relay throws, players not fielding balls correctly off the wall, and Buck's knowledge of the rules and how he conveys them to his team, and the stories of Buck's attention to detail is remarkable, as I've never seen anyone else come close to talking and teaching a sport like how Buck does it in baseball. But anyways, Buck Showalter would be the new manager, and looming was the return of the boss. It was announced in 1992 that George Steinbrenner would be able to operate the Yankees as he normally did on March 1st, 1993. Steinbrenner, he had been petitioning Commissioner Fay Vincent to be reinstated and also wrote letters to other owners. Steinbrenner also dropped his lawsuits against Commissioner Vincent. In the past, Steinbrenner, he had his sociopathic tendencies, but when Steinbrenner came back to the Yankees, he wasn't meddling as much as he seemed to be more laid back to a degree. However, and supposedly, Gene Michael had to convince Steinbrenner to be patient with the young talent because they're going to be great and not to trade them away, which is something Steinbrenner liked to do in the past, trade away prospects for veterans. Steinbrenner's suspension may have been the best thing for the Yankees, as that void allowed Gene "Stick" Michael to be the GM to lay the foundation for the 1992 Yankees. They went 76 and 86, and now "Stick" Michael, he was going to be doing some tremendous transactions that were fabulous. After the 92 season, there were 4 notable acquisitions. The best one was trading Roberto Kelly for basically Paul O'Neill. Now O'Neill, he wasn't a bad player for Cincinnati, but statistically, he was a much better hitter with New York. O'Neill said that he put much more pressure on himself while playing in Cincinnati because it was his hometown. As for the 1993 Yankees, New York, they finally had a winning record, going 88 and 74. They were one of the better offensive teams in the AL, but the pitching was in the lower half, but Jimmy Key, he had a great season. For the 1994 season, the Yankees had the best record in the American League until a strike canceled the rest of the season, as it was a devastating blow for Yankees fans who haven't seen their team play in the postseason since 1981. But baseball would resume in 1995 as Pettit, Rivera, Jeter, and Posada would all make their major league debuts this season. Stick Michael, he also acquired David Cone during the season in a trade, as Cone he was terrific for New York. Stick also traded for a really good closer in John Wetland, who was acquired from Montreal. The New York Yankees finally made the postseason, earning the American League's first ever wildcard berth. Finally, fan favorite Don Mattingly was going to the postseason. However, in a best-of-5 series, the Yankees won the first 2 games of the series, but lost the final 3, and thus they were eliminated. After the season, Buck Showalter was given a new 2-year contract, but it's been reported that Steinbrenner wanted hitting coach Rick Down to be let go. Buck was unwilling to do this, and thus Showalter would not return as manager. Don Mattingly, he would also not return, as 1995 was his last season. With these 2 departures, I heard a quote I think from someone on the radio. The Yankees infielder Randy Velarde said the Yankees will never win the World Series. At this time, it took the quote not in the correct context, as it sounded like Velarde was ripping the franchise, but after a New York Post article that I was able to find, Velarde he basically said he didn't see the Yankees win the World Series the following year, partly due to the departures of Showalter and Mattingly. As Velarde he signed with the Angels and had a chance to sign back with the Yankees, but Velarde he liked the Angels' chances better more than the Yankees. Now of course he'd be wrong, and what transpired got me extremely irritated with how Major League Baseball was, as I'm curious if others agree with me for what I'm about to say. Now before I begin to wrap this up, I want to mention one more great transaction that was credited to Stick Michael. Seattle, they're trying to slash payroll. Thus the Mariners had traded Tino Martinez and reliever Jeff Nelson, who was so tough on right-handed hitters, to the Yankees for a promising prospect in Russ Davis and starting pitcher Sterling Hitchcock. Seattle wanted Pettit, but New York, they rejected that. But anyways, with this group of 5, along with Tino Martinez, Paul O'Neill, and David Cone, the Yankees won the World Series in 1996, 1998, 1999, and 2000. Now, of course, there were other acquisitions, but the 2 I want to mention are Roger Clemens and Chuck Knobloch. At the time, what irritated me was that Clemens and Knobloch, they both demanded trades, and it seemed like, from my point of view at the time, they only wanted to be traded to the Yankees. Now, this wasn't necessarily the case, as they both wanted to be traded to contenders, but the Yankees, they were able to take on their contracts. In Knobloch's case, the Yankees also gave the Twins $3 million, but New York, they were a franchise that could take on larger salaries and trades and give cash. I was beginning to incredibly hate baseball and wonder if other baseball fans felt this way. The financial disparity was huge. Now, there were also other teams who had high payrolls at the time, most notably the Dodgers, Orioles, and Rangers, but the Yankees were the epitome of what I felt was a huge problem in baseball, of how unequal MLB truly was. I began to have no interest in baseball because of the Yankees and the economics of baseball. Should Yankees fans feel guilty or care about fans like me? No, of course not, and it's not the Yankees' fault at all. In addition, the annoyance levels got even more ridiculous because ESPN was in love with the Yankees and acted like every other team was like a farm system for the Yankees. But anyways, I will say this. Nowadays in baseball, there are items to make it somewhat more balanced. Now there are items such as revenue sharing, extra draft picks for smaller markets, draft compensation, and a luxury tax. The Dodgers, they seem to have everything in place to be one of the best teams in baseball as long as Andrew Friedman is running the club. But even with that said, I don't think they'll ever have the success like the Yankees had in the late 90s and early 2000s. Yes, the Yankees had some incredible advantages back then, but another reason why I don't think we'll never see a team win as much as the Yankees did was because New York somehow had a group of players that were clutch in the postseason. And I don't think there will ever be a group that had such players who produced in big moments. Yes, the economics of baseball and the Yankees made me highly dislike baseball, but I have to admit, the major key was the drafting, signing, and development of these 5 players and the assemblance of players who wound up being so clutch, as so much of the credit goes to this guy, Gene Stick Michael. Real quick, I just want to thank all those who have supported 90s Sports Nostalgia. Don't forget to subscribe, like, comment, share, and check out the links below for Patreon and merch. Thank you so much. New York Yankees baseball in the 90s.